Pakistan is known for some this fake pilot, this that. But somewhere I read, sir, in fact, India is much unsafer than Pakistan because of some audits. Okay, sir, you have flown almost 40 years. Whether you would have seen many emergency situations. In fact, I think once you did it, some engine failure was there, something.
You have the aptitude to be a pilot.
Is it max and all? And you told Pakistan is having a strong judiciary, so they are much safer. Do you mean to say India judiciary is not strong?
With global warming, you never know when if you see for the last 10 years, every rain is getting heavier than the earlier one and flooding. Now, see how many lakes and water bodies are built up. When I was in the flying club, we have to demonstrate that if I lose an engine, I should be able to put it down even in a football field. I have to, so the instructor will cut the engine or pull the throttle back. I have to show that I can put it down somewhere safely. And where we used to do a forced landing, as it was called? Velacherry Lake. Between the race club and almost Ayyar, it was a lake on either side of the Velacherry road. I've landed on the dry bed in Velacherry. Today, if I try landing there, I'll be dead. Because if you look at the Google map and see the amount of lakes and water bodies which are filled up, where will the water go? Because you've got buildings everywhere. Now they are talking of the new airport, which is going to be 4,000 acres of concrete. It is all covering the water body. So if there is a rain in the catchment areas, where will it go? Chennai will be finished. They don't even think, they're only thinking of today. They never think of 10 years ahead. So this is where foresight is required. It is not just pleasing your boss.
Now, Kathmandu airport, they say frequent flight accidents happen. Is it true, sir, that Mangalore airport is even now unsafe? Already you told about Calicut airport. Which are the airports which are unsafe in India so that I can avoid going that area by flight?
See, Mangalore and Calicut are dangerous for jet aircraft. See, an aircraft,
Jet means that bigger one.
no, even the like 737 and 320, you have all, you have the runway according to IQ. At end of both runways, you have to have 60 meters of strip. And where the terrain is fine, you need 90 meters, what is called runway end safety area, RASA. So it's 90 plus 60 is 150. But where the terrain does not give the safety margin, the RASA has to be 240 meters. So it's 60 meters plus 240. So at both ends, you need the safety margin of 300 meters. Neither Mangalore nor Calicut, like Calicut has only 90 meters. Yeah? And then on either side, it is supposed to be 140 meters from the center line. Both Mangalore and Calicut have only 75 meters. So if an aircraft skids off to the right, like what happened to the Jet Airways aircraft in Goa, you will be dead. And just like, have they learned a lesson from Mangalore, that crash tender? When I did the audit of Calicut, I pointed out that the road on the side of the runway, perimeter road, which the crash tender has to take to reach if an aircraft overshoots the runway is too narrow, your crash tenders cannot. In 2016, a DGCA audit of the fire service, the driver had to drive fast to demonstrate he can reach the end of the runway along that road in a particular time. He overturned. The driver was injured, so was the DGCA man. 4 years before the crash, they knew a rescue cannot be possible. But the license, which is for 2 years, the officer signs. I'm sorry to say, but it was an IAS officer. They just signed without. Has he been held accountable? No. So as long as you have no accountability, those are dangerous airfields. The other one is Patna. It does not have the runway and safety area. It doesn't have because on one end you have the railway track and the signal equipment. The railways will not shift the railway track. The other end you have the clock tower of the secretariat, the assembly. So there are obstacles and you don't have the required runway length. We proved that, and in 2013, the DGCA issued a thing that the runway is restricted. So only your ATRs with Jet or Air India and the Q400 of the SpiceJet could land there. Now the ego of the politicians in Patna, how will they travel by a turboprop? They should be traveling by jet. So a lot of pressure was brought, and the chief minister, who is now the chief minister, Nitish Kumar, wrote to the civil aviation minister, and civil aviation minister ordered the restoration of the runway length, and that restriction was removed. So every flight there is a lottery.
Are there fake pilots, sir?
Plenty. To start with, we
Who's
have
a fake pilot?
fake pilot is someone who has not got the license, completing the required number of hours, and not meeting the standards. Now, we had several DGCA officials whose sons and daughters have CPL, they got the jobs.
CPL means commercial pilot
license. They got the jobs in airline. They all are taken care of.
They're all flying.
Yeah, they're all flying. And in 2012, it was brought up about a fake pilot. And then the DGCA conducted an inquiry, and they found that there were many. They took action only against 11. And one of them was a woman pilot who was an instructor in Nagpur Flying Club, who was trained and checked out 100 people. And she had done only 11 hours for her CPL. The rest were all fake. She had piled on hours on her job as an instructor. So everyone who was checked out by her technically is not qualified. But then many of them were flying in the airlines. And airlines have a lot of clout with DGCA. And the thing was swept under the carpet. And there was one director of safety in DGCA whose daughter was sent back from the flying school in US after 60 hours saying she's unfit.
She's unfit to fly.
Yeah. Came to India and in some fictitious flying club, ours were thing. She got a CPL and she is flying in some, I don't know which airline now. So,
Pakistan is known for this fake pilot, this, that. But somewhere I read, sir, in fact, India is much unsafer than Pakistan because of some audits, whatever reports.
Like International Civil Aviation Organization conducts safety audits. If you see between 2006 when they pointed out a number of things, including a mandatory requirement of a independent civil aviation authority in India. We are in 2004, we still don't have an independent regulator.
In 2024.
2024. Pakistan may have, but then they have a very strong judiciary. The Supreme Court of Pakistan have pulled them up a number of times. And if you see between 2006 and 2024, Pakistan has had only one or maybe two ICAO safety audits, while India has had a dozen. You know, so because these ICAO audits are all, you scratch my back, I scratch, a diplomatic thing. So they won't downgrade a country or anything. They will point out when they do the audit, they send you the deficiency report. And the country gives back a response with a timeline when it will be completed, how they will comply. And it's called, it is done on mutual trust. So India gives back a thing that we have complied with this. Most of it is lies.
They give in writing
Yeah,
lie.
yeah.
And you told Pakistan is having a strong judiciary, so they are much safer. Do you mean to say India judiciary is not strong?
Well, your Mangalore crash thing is the best example of how clueless our judiciary is on aviation safety. I wrote an article about that for my in the newspaper. I've written in my uncle Justice Krishnaswamy's book. In 97, an activist in Karnataka filed a writ in Karnataka High Court saying that the proposed Mangalore runway location is unsafe. If an aircraft overshoots the runway, it will plunge down 100 meters and rescue will not be possible. It went all the way to Supreme Court. And Supreme Court finally dismissed his petition with a statement that the government shall comply with all the rules and regulations. When the Mangalore crash took place, that aircraft plunged down 100 meters, rescue did not reach, 158 people perished. With proof, a PIL was filed by a young lawyer and it went to a Supreme Court bench and they dismissed it, saying they handed over the entire case file to the Civil Aviation Ministry, saying to consider whether it's a worthwhile case. It's like asking a murderer, you decide whether you murdered. It's like what these rapists have been let out, on some pretext or other because of political clout. Gujarat. It's just like that. So I have the lowest opinion of the judicial standards in India. Though the present judgment brought back hope for me. Otherwise, I have a very low opinion.
But it's an irony now because you're talking about judiciary. Your uncle happens to be one of the best judges, Justice Krishna Ayyar, a name. Now, have you had personal interaction with him?
Of course. In fact, after the Mangalore crash, and when I wrote about the danger of Calicut, Justice Krishna wrote to the minister saying that it is dangerous to operate to Calicut and this is a proof. He enclosed my letter. They have ignored that. I have a copy of Justice Krishna's letter with me.
They have ignored. Why they are ignoring? Because of pressure from airlines?
Not just because if you have restricted runway, you can't operate bigger
aircrafts, then passenger number will come down.
Yeah, and then they have to plead. Like you have a very beautiful and safe runway, not very far from Calicut and Kannur. But it's the ego, the people, the Gulf connected people in Calicut. they want to have a direct flight with a big jet from Calicut. They will not drive to Kannur and fly in a safe environment. So here, everything depends on how many votes or how many MLAs or MPs will back us from there. So decision is all political. If people are dead, the Supreme Court turns a blind eye. So we know that none of us are going to be sent to jail. So why should they act? That is the main. So I'm not mincing words, but when the safety standards and training standards in India are the lowest, and you are flying only on your horoscope. It is the standard of the aircrafts and the aircraft computers, and a small percentage, I would say 30% of qualified pilots.
You mean to say 70% there may be a chance that fake pilots are there?
Not fake, incompetent pilots.
Incompetent in the sense who have not completed that number of flight
No,
hours.
they have not shown the profit. I know how airlines have fudged their training. You know, you're supposed to do simulators and all that. They've fudged the training record, they've fudged the training hours.
So someone whenever we are going, maybe someone, it's all horoscope then.
If your horoscope is good, you'll complete your flight.
Okay, sir, you have flown almost 40 years. Whether you would have seen many emergency situations. In fact, I think once you did it, some engine failure was there, something still.
No, first one was during Indian Airlines, where my nose gear
Nose gear means the front one.
did not lock down because of metal fatigue. It was a structural failure of that actuator.
Lockdown means didn't come out.
When it comes down, when it's completely down, the actuator locks down. It is what's called a mechanical lock. But it didn't lock down because it had cracked. So it was just out, but it was hanging loose.
Means there was no that front tire touch.
Yeah, so as soon as I landed, it went in because it was not held down by the strut. But there is a procedure, we are trained for that. If your training is good and if you're competent, you can handle any emergency which happens. Like we've seen the recent Japan Airlines crash. How a really top class training helps. With only 3 out of the emergency exits working out of 8, they evacuated 380 people. Not one of them was injured because the training standards are extremely high and the passengers are highly disciplined. Not one of them took their handbags with them. Not one of them wore the shoes, which your safety demonstration says don't do that. How many even look at safety demonstrations in India? You know, they don't. They're all busy with their cell phones watching some YouTube or some video. They don't even. And the airline crew go through the motion of showing the demonstration, how to don the life vest, how to do this, how to get the mask. How many of them even look at it? You know, it's because of we as passengers are not disciplined. Like if you looked at the video of the Japan Airlines, you saw row by row they were getting out. Somebody had video of that. While here, as soon as it comes to a stop, how many get up and until the doors open, you can't even get out. You see how many of the passengers, like sheep, they just get and rush and block up everything. They never did it. So that is one of the things. And even the evacuation drills and things like that. I don't know how the new Air India training is going to be, but they've got to learn a lot. Like in Singapore, in their training center, every pilot, your pilot license is valid only if your safety license is valid. We have to go through that fire drill every year. You know, they have a fire chamber like an aircraft. The instructor will start, for each kind of fire, there's a different extinguisher. So you have to identify what is the fire, use the correct extinguisher, put it out. Only if you do that, he will pass you. Same way the ditching drill, if you are landing on water, after all, there's an island, they take off, all their flights are over water. So if you crash into the water, you should know how to rescue people who are, even though they have the life vest, you've got to bring them in to the raft. So you should know how to launch the raft. So they have a big swimming pool in the training center with a wave generator, because it's not like a swimming pool where the water is calm. Waves are created, like what you will encounter. You have to board the raft, launch it, help people on. So it is done every year. How many airlines in India do those drills? So to say that yes, they are qualified, my cabin crew, you can have fancy uniforms, but how many are really trained? So as long as you downgrade training, and as long as the regulator doesn't enforce the training standards, you can't call yourself a safe aviation system.
And how you landed, sir, that without that nose?
See the procedure, there is a procedure called partial gear up. One, you reduce the weight by circling, or you use the drag to burn out fuel so that your landing speed is minimum. And depending on which gear is damaged, like for the nose gear, they say that you land on your main wheels.
So you landed like this.
Yeah. Keep the nose up as long as you can. Don't, by holding back the elevator controls. And when the speed comes low and it cannot hold it up, it will slowly sink. So you cushion the landing. Like when I did that, it dragged for about 1200 meters on the runway, it scraped. But then it is only the lower surface which is damaged. And the aircraft flew out in 48 hours. They replaced the skin. But if you don't do the nose gear landing correctly, then the aircraft can catch fire.
And once you landed without that back wheel, something, one side.
Yeah, it has a tire burst which disintegrated. It blew
When
out.
it happened, sir, which flight you were?
It was a Singapore Jakarta flight. And during takeoff, I heard a thud, I think. And after liftoff, the tower told me that some part fell off from your aircraft.
From the control, they informed you.
Yeah. See, they were very observant and they said something fell from your aircraft. So then I told them to inspect, and instead of proceeding on my thing, I remained in what we call a holding pattern. And then they...
Means you were flying over the airport only then?
Yeah, near the airport.
Near the airport.
And then what they sent the Singapore Airlines engineers to inspect, and then they told me...
How they can inspect from the ground? You are flying?
I was flying, they sent it on the engineer went on ground by jeep.
Okay, and okay.
And on radio they told me. So they said a 7-foot or 9-foot section of the flap had blown off. That had fallen. And there were a lot of tire pieces all over on the runway. And so I did the procedure of reducing weight by circling with a drag.
Reducing weight means
Burning
out
fuel.
the fuel.
No, I can't. See, the big jets have the dumping the fuel, but the 737 doesn't have a dumping procedure. So we have to keep circling, keeping the gear down, maximum drag, and burn more fuel, and try to bring it as low as possible, and land only on the side where the good wheel is.
You landed like this, sir?
Yeah. And then keep it down as long as the wing can stay up. And then...
Won't it tilt?
It won't. You can control it. Thing is, on simulator...
How whether you announced to the passengers that there is...
Yeah, I announced to the passengers. And
that
they were all briefed. I didn't know that... I know that tire had gone. I said, we'll be doing an emergency landing. Just follow the cabin crew instructions. So the cabin crew will... I'll never say what is the damage to the aircraft. You should not create panic in the...
Were you panicked, sir?
No, not at all. If I was panicked, I may not do the right thing.
So you are just landing in one. It's like a movie.
We are trained for that. Like when somebody says that, oh, it's a miraculous, it's not. I mean, if you're a professional, you're trained, and you can't say that it's a miracle. If you can't do something for which you're trained, you go through that in the simulator. If you do your simulated training and checks diligently, if an airline follows that, then you can call yourself a safe airline. But when you have, every now and then, an aircraft landing long and going off the runway, or tail strike and things like that, one after the other, it shows the system in very poor light. Because an accident investigation is done to identify what is the cause. Then the main thing the ICAO Annex 13 says, you do not blame and punish. You identify the cause and take preventive steps to prevent a recurrence. But here, just like Mangalore or Calicut, so many overruns we've had, same kind of errors, same mistakes, but they only blame the pilot. Nobody, no airline is blamed, no training is blamed, nothing. So you have not found a solution. So when you have not found a solution and the same kind of accident is taking place, can you call yourself a safe system? So can the regulator claim that they are doing their job? So that is the problem.
If seeing this, someone wants to become a pilot, a lot of people from across India, they'll be seeing which age one has to decide whether they can join, and what are there will be certain qualities, like on someone wants to write civil service. I know a degree is required, basic hardworking ability is required, means some what the personality traits plus a decent knowledge, decent level. Now, like that, what age someone has to decide? Someone wants to become
See,
a pilot.
the minimum age for a flying license is 17.
17.
Ah. Like, you don't have, all they need is a high school.
Okay, sir.
Okay. And when I started, I was told by my instructor, who was my father's student in
Student.
college, that I must make sure I'm medically fit. So I went to Bangalore, even though it was not required for the starting the flying. I did it in IAM. Then
Medically fit means what?
you have medical standards or your flying license. Unlike your driving license is just a fast, you go to one roadside doctor, get a certificate. Here they do everything. Your general medical, your eye test, your hearing test, everything. And until you clear the medical standards, you come back. Even though it was not required for the initial, my instructor insisted that I should go and see that. After spending all the money, if you find you're medically unfit, the whole thing goes down the drain. So I went and did my CPL medical in IAM Bangalore. Then he also told my father, make him complete his graduation. Because as a backup, because if you are medically unfit, he can't get a job as a pilot. So if you're a graduate, at least you have something to fall back on. So, but here, because the minimum is 17 years and high school, if you have the money, and because you know that when you get a job, you're getting 2 lakh plus. So people with money, they pump in money for their children to do the license. First thing, like when we joined Indian Airlines in the 70s, we had to do what is called an aptitude test. You have the aptitude to be a pilot.
Is it max and all?
Yeah, see, you don't need all the math, but you must have basic trigonometry knowledge. So, people without the basic requirement, like if you're a graduate At least you know that you have something to fall back on. And if you have maths background, maths and physics, you can understand the dynamics better. But without that, just because you have the money, my father has paid for it, I get the license and come, then you're not really a professional. And the other thing is,
Are there any minimum, because you're telling high school? No, 17 years. So higher secondary, 12th standard or 10th standard?
12th standard.
12th standard. Minimum 50%, 80%, 90, something, nothing like that. So whatever their marks, they should have some basic money plus physical standards plus that ability, mathematical ability.
And they should have the aptitude to be a pilot. You have the aptitude test, whether your coordination, your hand-eye coordination, your brain hand coordination, it has to be there. There are tests for that. So all that is not being done diligently. So unless a person is got the maturity, see, when you become a pilot, many airlines, rich 19-year-old kids have got the license, they have the connection, they get a job. 19 years, what maturity does he have? And abroad, like if you're flying a big aircraft, like wide body aircraft, they will not give you a command unless you have 6,500 hours total. Here, if you take some of the airlines, you've got a 22-year-old captain who's got 2,200 hours. And he's got a co-pilot who's done 200 hours on a Cessna or a light aircraft. What maturity do you have in the cockpit? It's all nice to say that I've ordered 500 aircrafts or thing, but do you have the experienced crew? So numbers don't make it a safe system.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your knowledge. And it was so enlightening to us because all these days I always feel flying safely. But after having an interaction with you, it's all horoscope. Anyhow, thank you so much for enlightening us. In fact, you gave your views very frankly. And thank you so much for sparing your time. Thank you, sir. In this video, we learned from Captain Ranganathan how the life of a pilot is, how emergency landing happens, how safe it is for us to travel in flights. Several interesting things we learned from Captain Ranganathan. I hope it was useful for you. So please stay tuned and we'll meet in our next podcast interview. Thank you.